next up, we'll come back to the first communication later. We're going to move on to the quarterly update of the Metro Atlanta Land Bank from Mr. Christopher Norman. Mr. Norman.
All right, I think I am live now.
You are. Welcome.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Chairman Moreland, for allowing me to come once again to the committee. Thank you to the committee members for giving us this forum to give you an update on a quarterly basis of what the Metro Atlanta Land Bank has been up to. I think the last update was in November. And so we want to go through just kind of giving you a little bit of a high-level overview of what we have been doing and kind of where we're going, and then open the floor to questions from you. So I'll ask for the presentation to go ahead and put forth and on the screen. So we're just going to kind of walk you through a series of topics, and just go to the next slide here, which kind of runs you through just an outline of the things we intend to talk about today. So it really kind of falls into certain categories of policies, some transactional updates, a little bit of a lunch and learn webinar series that we're conducting, operational overview, and then the financial update, and then open the floor to questions. And so I'll go ahead and proceed with the presentation. So going to slide number 4, which falls under the area of policy. The governing documents that support the land bank, just like any other organization, we have some bylaws that support what we do. The original bylaws were actually drafted in 1991 when the land bank was actually created, and those have actually not been updated since that point in time. However, since that time, the interlocal cooperation agreement, which is actually the document that exists that demonstrates how the city of Atlanta and how Fulton County came together and what the responsibilities and roles of each entity were, and some of the expectations for the organization, where that has been updated. And that was updated back in February of 2017. One of the emphasis of doing that was because the state law for Georgia changed in terms of how land banks are actually governed. We were actually part of helping to get that approved, and that was back in 2012. So we updated the interlocal, and then we actually had our general counsel to proceed to update our bylaws to basically bring those into sync with one another. So now our bylaws reflect the new elements of the new law and new elements of the interlocal cooperation agreement. And so our board did review that. We held it open several months for comment, and then it was approved on April 27th of this year. And so now we're operating under our new bylaws, and those are now in sync. So did just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. The updated bylaws, I believe they are posted to our website. If not, they are in the process of being posted. And then if anybody on the committee or from the public would like to obtain a copy of those, feel free to reach out to us, and we can make sure that those are available. So let's move on to the transactional update. So we can go to the next slide, and then the next slide after that. So that brings us to an item that we brought before the committee before, which is the pilot program between the Land Bank and the Atlanta Land Trust, Inc. And just for full disclosure, I do serve as the chair of the board of the Atlanta Land Trust, Inc. But we try to keep an arm's length between the two organizations. We entered into an MOU with the Atlanta Land Trust back in May of last year for a pilot program. This pilot program was really to kind of start thinking through and testing out how do we convey properties from the land bank to the land trust as it executes its mission of doing portable housing under the model of the community land trust. And so under this, we also had approved a pricing policy that governs how we basically convey property to not the land trust, but any entity that's involved in permanently affordable housing. As it stands right now, the Atlanta Land Trust is the predominant one that we deal with. And so under that, there were 14 properties that were identified. The update is that the first property, 900 North Eugenia, which is in Grove Park, was acquired by the Land Trust earlier this year. They had complete renovation of that property. It is actually on the market right now for $100,000 and is moving towards contract. And so I do want to point out, the significance of that price point. So you know that there's been an escalation of pricing in that particular neighborhood based on a lot of good things that are happening from the Beltline, from the Court Park, from Microsoft's announcement. But our ability to keep this property and sell it to someone for $100,000, we think is a huge benefit to the community. One of the folks, I think one of the contractors is actually a resident from that area. So anything we can do to keep those properties and prices in line would be helpful. And I do want to point out, this is an interesting story. On this particular property, it was donated to us by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And so this is part of a money laundering drug case that has now been turned into a property that will be sold for an able-bodied resident or family for $100,000. So I think that's a win. They've also partnered with Growth by NCRC. NCRC is a national nonprofit organization. They do have an affiliate fund arm and construction arm. And so they've entered into an arrangement with them to basically deal with the remaining 13 properties, and they can provide purchase funds as well as rehab dollars and construction services to bring those properties online. We are doing these in tranches, and so they're now looking at the next 5 properties to acquire from the land bank to do the same thing that they did with 900 North Eugenia and bring those properties to market. All of these would be for sale product, not for rent. And so we'll be creating opportunities for new homeowners in the city. So if you move to the next slide number 7, this is just kind of a listing of the properties from the MOU. It shows you all the properties that we have identified to convey to the Atlanta Land Trust. And it also shows you in the same slide, and there's a map inset that shows you where all these properties are located physically. And you'll see the shaded area is the belt line itself. And so you can see where these properties with the blue dots on the map are in reference to the belt line. So again, the neighborhoods, English Avenue, Grove Park, Ashby Heights, Oakland City, and Pittsburgh, quite diverse selection of neighborhoods. But I think this is going to be a great program when this is all done. And hopefully this leads to additional properties being conveyed to the Land Trust and any other group that comes forward to be a community land trust organization. Next slide. So council is aware of the abatement property or demo lien foreclosure project. There have been several pieces of legislation that that's fall under your jurisdiction, which you have passed. So under this, council engaged by the city has proceeded to do this foreclosure proceedings on identified properties that basically had demolition liens outstanding on them. So these are properties that have already been demolished. The properties are basically vacant lots. And so now the city is moving to take ownership of those properties. So the first 151 parcels have been transferred to the land bank. These are all multifamily parcels. I do want to point out that of the 151 parcels, if you look at a list in the detail, several of these are actually what happened with several apartment complexes of the city is they were converted to condos. And so you may have 40 units, which basically constitute 40 parcels. And so as the city has moved to take ownership of control of that entire footprint, you may have 40 individual parcels. So these will be conveyed as packages. So basically it's a former multifamily site that's going to be redeveloped. But these will be handled by Invest Atlanta. And so we're going to manage these properties and then convey them over to Invest Atlanta. And Invest Atlanta will do their normal processes and procedures to identify a developer for those. Some of these, since they were distressed and abandoned, had delinquent taxes. And so we've actually moved using the powers of the land bank to extinguish some of the delinquent taxes. The first cohort, 45 of these 151 parcels had delinquent taxes, approximately $732,000. That was approved by our board of directors to extinguish those taxes as we have done in the past. And then these properties, and this request is now moving on to Atlanta Public Schools for their review and consent. Once that is done, these properties will then move forward to the tax commission for extinguishment. Just want to kind of keep everybody up to speed that this is a multi-phase project. And as it moves forward, we'll provide additional updates as the more parcels are procured and secured by the city and subsequently the land bank. And so I've spoken about the multifamily portion. I do want to also talk about the single family. There are single family lots that are going through the same process. Those are coming to the land bank. Some of those properties will be handled by the land bank as far as their redevelopment. And so the first step in that is we're going to identify single family developers that have an interest in that type of property. We are in the process of drafting that RFQ, request for qualification document now. Our target is for it to be approved by our board at the July board meeting, which is the end of July, and then subsequently publish that and then start seeking partners to do that. And so that will put us into a position probably around that September timeframe to actually make awards to developers to become partners in this program. So I wanted to kind of give you an update on where we stand relative to that project. So if we can move on to our next slide, kind of a category of slides. One thing we've been doing along with our new branding of the land bank is that we want to make sure that people are aware of what your land bank is, what your land bank can do, and actually how to work with your land bank. And so we created something called the Lunch and Learn webinar series. And so we started this back in January of this year, where we basically take 30 minutes on the fourth Monday of every month to do a short presentation, short burst presentation, kind of gives you a nice bit of info about a topic relative to land bank. And then we actually provide another 30 minutes for questions. And I think these have been well received based on the attendees and the feedback we've gotten. So first one, and these are kind of the front slides from the webinar series. The first one was really just a general overview of a 101 about land banks. And then we did that basically back in January. So next slide. The next slide speaks to the fact that we did a 5-year strategic plan that I talked about in November when I presented to you last time. And so this was our opportunity to share this with the public via a Lunch and Learn platform. And so that webinar, which is in February, we basically laid out these 5-year strategic plan for the land bank for everybody to review. Then next slide. The next slide was speaking to, we often get the question about, how do you acquire property from the Land Bank Authority? And in particular, there's a focus on what category share for marshal deeds. And so we put forth a webinar. This was the March webinar. And that was also, I was joined by our program director, Tarika Bashir, and she joined me with doing that one, and we had a robust conversation and audience on that one, and we talked about how do you acquire property from the Land Bank Authority. And then that's going to take us to our next slide, which speaks to our April webinar series. We created a program that some of you are aware of called the Land Banking Depository Program, which is basically, we partner with our nonprofits, particularly, and some of our government agencies to basically hold their properties in trust for up to 5 years. And during that time, they're able to do such things as get the development plans called forth and be prepared to execute on the processes and programs. So this was a little deeper dive for the public in terms of what is this thing? How does it work? And how can you as a nonprofit, a personal land bank, potentially involving yourself with that? And then that takes us to our next one, which was how do you do business with the land bank? So this was our May webinar. And particularly, this is a focus on vendors. So how does a vendor do work with the land bank? As you know, we have a lot of virtual capacity via external services from everything from property management companies to bookkeepers to auditors, demolition companies, lawyers, all these types of things. So how do you approach us and do that? So I actually spent 30 minutes talking about how do you actually do business with the Land Bank Authority. So that was one thing that we thought went well and was well intended. So, and you go to the next slide. So all of these basically was a way for us to provide 24/7 information availability to folks about the land bank. All of these videos were recorded. They've all been posted to our website. As indicated on this slide on page 15, the link to this, you can just click on here, it takes you right to it. But if you actually want to go to our website, which is metroatlantalandbank.org, and you go to our resources page and you'll see webinars, and you can click on that. And you can actually review and look at all the webinars that you may have missed. And we're trying to make a point to put more content onto the website so you have availability for folks 24/7. And that takes us to our next section, which is operational. So what's going on with our land bank? So one thing we're doing, we are in the process of hiring 2 additional employees for the land bank. These are positions that were previously filled. They've been vacated, and we're actually now in the process of hiring new folks to fill those positions. Particularly, we have one as an analyst and one as a vacant property manager. We engaged HRKS. It basically is a virtual human resources department for the land bank. We don't have an HR person on staff. We've basically been kind of doing that ad hoc in the past. So now this group, HRKS, is handling the recruitment and engagement of this. We're in the midst of this right now. Matter of fact, had an interview with a potential candidate before getting on this call, and then have another one after I get off this presentation. But they're targeting to have both of these filled by the end of July, present it to our board for review and approval, and then have these persons start work late July, beginning of August. So just want to kind of keep everybody up to speed. If you look at the next slide, kind of lays out, again, this shows you our organizational structure for the land bank. And so the blue boxes, these are filling these blue boxes here. We've changed the title, management analyst to just analyst. And then I spoke to our virtual capacity, that's all the green shaded boxes. And basically, these are contractors or vendors that we use. And so we actually are able to execute on a fairly robust basis by leveraging the talents of the 6 folks through these other people that we do. And then, of course, all this is under the purview of our board of directors, which your group has a hand in appointing the representatives there. And so we'll move to the next slide. So in addition to making hires, we have been in our current location for over 20 years, and we're actually in the process of relocating. The building is sold, and so we thought this was a great opportunity given what has happened with the commercial real estate market. You actually seen some downtrends in real estate and rent rates. So we're actually going to be moving into the Peachtree Center complex at 229 Peachtree Street. Not too far off what we're currently paying in rent. And so we're moving into a 66-month lease arrangement, 5.5 years. Here, our target move is August 1st. So folks that have been used to coming and see us at 34 Peachtree Street, which is across the Woodruff Park, but now I just have to go a few more blocks down Peachtree, and they can find us at the Peachtree Center complex, which has been newly renovated. We think it's a great location. It's right off of MARTA. And so it's really accessible to anybody that wants to come and do business with the Metro Atlanta Land Bank. And then our next slide, just really speaks to the financial status of the land bank and kind of where we are. So on page 21, you'll see kind of a cash on hand kind of depiction. You'll see that, we've come a long way. So April last year, things have gotten fairly lean at the land bank, to say the least. We've been able to turn the corner with some transactional opportunities that we have generated and brought to fruition. I do want to thank everybody that's been continuing to be supportive of the land bank in terms of the city of Atlanta. I know we were approved for the new budget cycle for an allocation of the general fund. So you'll see this uptick when you look at our update. We do this monthly at our board meetings. So come our June balances, and also in August, July, when I receive our allocation from the city, then we'll have a fairly strong cash balance on hand that's going to allow us to continue to do the good work of the land bank. And we do know that we're positioning ourselves to not only receive general funds from the city, from the county, but we'll also have a stated goal of generating operational revenue from our transactions going forward, which by statute we are able to do. We intend to continue doing that. And then, the next slide, all of this is part of our overall strategic goals for our land bank, which is to help facilitate the creation of affordable and market housing throughout the city of Atlanta. And also to any type of situations that we may find ourselves with blight, to basically move to help eliminate that and turn property into productive use. Then also deal with neighborhoods that are still on a revitalization trajectory, to play a hand in revitalizing those neighborhoods. And underscoring that, it's still very important that controlling some land at some point in this process is important, and that is one of the goals of the land bank. And so that is a quick update of the land bank, some of the things we've been involved in, what's going on with the land bank, and where we're going. And so I'll be happy to entertain any questions at this moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norman, for your presentation and the work and progress that you all are doing. Colleagues, any comments or questions?
This is Smith. I'd like to say something.
Go for it.
Chris, you were just doing a great job, and I want everyone to know that you worked with me on the demo and when the houses have a lien on their property, that legislation we did a couple of months ago. And this presentation today is great, and I don't want to say a whole lot about the old days, but back a while ago, the Land Bank Authority didn't really do that much for us, and you have really stepped up the game, and you're doing a great job. So I just wanted to publicly thank you.
Councilmember Smith, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's been a lot of support from folks like yourself and the community and the committee and our great staff and partners. So we're happy to continue to do the work. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much.